I never imagined my grandma's heartbreaking journey would inspire my own path to overcoming trauma. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The storm raged outside, dark clouds swirling like angry spirits. My heart raced as I clutched my phone, the screen flickering with chaos. Grandma had called, her voice a quivering shadow. "It's happening again," she whispered. She had seen things no one could explain. Secrets crawled behind her eyes, memories stained with terror. I could hear her trembling hands struggle to hold the phone. The air felt thick and suffocating. I was just a kid then, an innocent bystander to her buried pain. Grandma was my anchor, yet she wore a mask of sorrow, hiding the storms of her past. She used to tell me stories about a small town, where whispers danced through the trees and shadows stretched under the moonlight. She always spoke of Janice, her best friend who disappeared without a trace. They were young and wild, chasing dreams that tangled with nightmares. The silence that followed her absence choked the town, leaving it deserted, and Grandma lost a piece of herself that day. I was drawn into the mystery, desperate to understand. Why did shadows linger in her laughter? Why did her eyes flicker with unshed tears? I would sit beside her, our hands wrapped around steaming cups of tea, my heart pounding with unsaid questions. Each story felt like a puzzle, but the pieces never fit. But that stormy night, when darkness clawed at the windows, everything changed. I could feel something electric in the air, a pulse vibrating through my bones. As Grandma's voice trembled in my ear, fear knotted in my stomach. Her breath caught, and I knew something terrible was about to spill out. The clock ticked loudly in the background, each sound echoing through the silence. Suddenly, she dropped the bombshell. I returned to that town to face the truth. My heart jumped. Was she going back to the place where so much pain began? "I need you to promise me you'll find Janice," she gasped, every word laced with urgency. My mind raced. How could I swim in this deep sea where Grandma had almost drowned? I was scared. I wanted to scream, to hide, but the weight of her words draped over me like a thick fog. I felt her fear wrapping around me, carving out a space in my chest. I nodded, not even sure what I was promising. Yet there was something else there, a spark of hope, a possibility of redemption buried within the shadows. Then the line went dead. Silence screamed through the phone. My breath hitched. The storm outside howled louder now, angry just like the chaos in my heart. I stared at the screen, paralyzed by dread. In that moment I knew my life would never be the same. The journey ahead was a dark road, fraught with unanswered questions. What truth awaited me? Could I truly uncover what happened to Janice? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days that followed felt like an eternity, each second stretching out, heavy with the weight of Grandma's words. I was consumed by a swirling mix of dread and determination. What if I couldn't discover the truth? What if Janice's fate remained forever locked behind a veil of silence? The questions gnawed at me, relentless and insatiable. The storm had passed, leaving behind a hum of unsettling calm. I stood in my grandmother's living room, surrounded by the echoes of her stories. The faded photographs on the walls seemed to whisper her history. Memories flickered like shadows across the room, and I could almost hear her laughter mingling with the past. But now that laughter felt like a haunting melody, one filled with sorrow. I glanced at the small wooden box on the coffee table, the one Grandma had designated as her treasure trove of memories. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment to arrive, to pass the torch. With trembling hands I lifted the lid, revealing an assortment of old photographs and trinkets, relics of a time when Grandma's spirit thrived. Each item told a story, but it was the crumpled letter nestled at the bottom that caught my eye. Unfolding the delicate paper, I felt a sense of intimacy wash over me. It was addressed to Janice, filled with the youthful dreams and plans they had shared. The ink was smudged, but one phrase stood out clearly. "No matter where life takes us, our bond will never break." My heart ached, realizing that Janice hadn't just disappeared. She had taken a piece of Grandma's heart with her. The tears I had been holding back finally spilled over, splattering the paper with droplets of anguish. I could only imagine the fear and helplessness Grandma had felt all those years ago. How alone she must have been with her secrets. But deep within those words lay a glimmer of understanding. Love could transcend darkness. If only I could hold on to that thread. Maybe I could pull her back into the light. I vowed silently to unravel the tangled web of their past. With renewed purpose I set out to discover more about that small town, about Janice's life and ultimately, the truth that had eluded Grandma for so long. The following weekend I packed a small bag and headed to the town she'd once called home. The familiar ache in my chest mingled with excitement. What awaited me there? I could feel the ghosts of their youth calling to me through the rustling leaves and creaking wooden signs. Arriving in the late afternoon, the town felt almost surreal, as if I had stepped into one of Grandma's stories. The air was crisp and for a moment, I felt a sense of belonging. I walked down the quiet streets, taking in the quaint shops and houses that had weathered time. But there was an unsettling undercurrent to the tranquility, a chilling reminder that something had gone terribly wrong as night began to creep in. I found a small diner, the kind that seemed frozen in time. The smell of coffee and fresh pie wafted through the air, luring me inside. I took a seat at the counter, glancing around at the sparse clientele. A waitress with kind eyes approached and offered a warm smile. "First time here, hon?" "Yeah," I replied, my voice a whisper. "I'm just exploring." "Nice little town," she said, but something in her tone suggested she knew more. "You must be brave to come here. Not everyone is keen on digging up the past." I frowned, a little taken aback by her comment. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, her gaze drifting to the window where shadows danced against the glass. "There's a lot of history here, honey. Some believe it's best left buried." A shiver ran down my spine as I felt the atmosphere shift. "Like what?" Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, as if speaking louder might awaken the spirits of the past. "Janice. Some folks around here still remember her, and they're not fond of outsiders asking questions." Before I could respond, a man burst through the door, his face flushed with urgency. He scanned the room, his eyes locking onto me. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low but filled with unyielding intensity. "Leave now while you still can." My heart raced, panic clawing at the edges of my mind. What did he know? Why did he care? I opened my mouth to ask, but the words were swallowed by the tension hanging in the air. The waitress stepped back, her face pale, and the diner fell into a focused silence, all eyes on me. Just as quickly as he arrived, the man turned and stormed out, leaving a swarm of unease in his wake. I felt invisible shackles fastening around my ankles. The truth was slipping through my fingers, and I was right back where my grandmother had once been, teetering on the edge of a terrifying abyss. I hadn't just stepped into a story. I was part of a living nightmare. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, ready to call Grandma, to connect with her heartbeat across the distance. But a new wave of horror fell over me as the screen flashed a solitary message instead: no signal, no connection. I was utterly alone, and in that moment of despair, a thought pierced my consciousness. If I couldn't reach anyone, how could I confront the darkness waiting for me in the shadows of this town? Threads of unease tightened around me, knotting my heart. I could feel dust motes dancing in the shifting light as I remained rooted at the counter, my coffee forgotten, growing cold. What had I stumbled into? Each questioning gaze of the diner patrons bore down on me like a weight, and I was acutely aware of the chilling silence that engulfed the room. "Are you okay?" The waitress' voice broke through the fog of my thoughts, her eyes reflecting kindness layered with concern. Before I could answer, she pointed toward the window. "You should keep your head down for a while. Sometimes it's better to be invisible here." I nodded, swallowing the knot in my throat. "What do you know about Janice?" "More than I want to," she replied quietly, glancing at the door. "Stay safe, okay? Not everyone means you well. You'll want to dig into the past at your own pace." As she spoke, I sensed the shiver of shared pain, a connection forged in the fear of unspoken truths. "Thank you," I managed to say, feeling the warmth of her kindness wrap around me like a thin blanket against the cold. After she retreated to attend to other customers, I pulled the crumpled letter from my pocket, studying the words again. The innocence in its message ignited a fire within me. It wasn't mere nostalgia driving this search, this was about love, loyalty, and the unbreakable ties that bind us through time and tragedy. I wasn't just seeking a missing piece of history. I was trying to piece together my grandmother's heart, long fragmented and lost in years of silence. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, a flicker of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe I was meant to be here. Perhaps Janice's story thrived in the hearts of others bound to this town. I glanced around the diner once more, weighing my choices. If discovery was what I sought, then I had to be both brave and cautious. Finishing my drink, I left the diner, stepping into a world reminiscent of my childhood nightmares, a world where shadows seemed sentient, lurking just beyond the reach of familiarity. But now, as I walked through the streets, I drew strength from my resolve. Somewhere, someone knew the truth about Janice, and I would find them. As dusk settled into night, I spotted a flickering light in a nearby alley, the sign of a bookstore with worn posters plastered on the walls. Its inviting glow beckoned me closer. Entering, I was engulfed by the rich scent of paper and leather-bound stories crowding the shelves. An elderly man stood behind the counter, carefully flipping through a faded book, and his eyes met mine. There was a familiarity there, like the echo of someone long gone, but I couldn't place it. "Can I help you?" he asked, his accent thick with age and wisdom. "I am looking for some history about Janice," I stammered, unsure of how to approach the subject without unveiling the heavy burden I carried. The man's expression shifted, shadowing with recognition. "You're passionate," he noted, tilting his head thoughtfully. "But it seems you walk a dangerous path." "Why? What do you know?" My desperation spilled into the air, and he paused, surveying me as if weighing his options. Janice's disappearance affected many lives. Some whispered her name in reverence, while others cast shadows longer than the truth. His words fanned the embers of my determination, but fear intertwined with curiosity. I needed more. "What are those whispers?" I pressed. He hesitated, closed the book and leaned forward. "People carry their own truths about the past, some darker than others. But beware. Knowledge of Janice's fate will awaken ghosts best left undisturbed. Are you prepared for what you might find?" "I have to be," I replied, feeling a strange sense of resolve take root in my heart. "I owe it to my grandmother." With a sigh, he led me to a creaky stairway in the back. "Then you best start here. Stories are embedded in the cracks of this town. Spoken, unspoken, listen sharply, but remember, the truth sometimes bites back." Each step echoed as we climbed toward a small room lined with old books and dusty artifacts. The air was tangy with time, and I could feel the unease simmering beneath the surface as the man handed me an old journal. Its binding was worn, and pages fluttered as if yearning to tell their secrets. As I skimmed the entries, voices floated through my mind, and I felt the beating heart of my grandmother's past resonate within each word. But just as I immersed myself in Janice's world, her laughter, her dreams, her joy, the journal dropped from my hands, plummeting to the ground. The chaotic sound echoed through the room, and the man's eyes widened. "You shouldn't have," he whispered, a tremor in his voice. "Now it finds you." "Finds me? What do you mean?" Panic surged once again, and suddenly, the walls around us seemed to close in. Outside, a sinister storm rolled in without warning, the wind howling with an eerie familiarity, and as I turned toward the window, something dark shifted in the shadows of the past. Friends or foes? I could no longer tell. And then, in that chaotic moment, my phone rang for the first time since I had arrived. I fumbled for it, hoping for a voice of reason, but when I looked at the screen, my breath caught. It was a message from Grandma. "Do not trust anyone. They know." The light flickered, plunging the room into darkness, and I felt the weight of the unspoken truths pressing down as I awaited whatever darkness my pursuit would unveil. The darkness enveloped the room like a suffocating shroud, and the flickering light cast distorted shadows against the walls. I felt my pulse quicken as the gravity of my grandmother's message crashed upon me. "Do not trust anyone. They know." My heart thudded in my chest, echoing the age-old warning that reverberated through my family's history, stemming from the very depths of Janice's mysterious fate. The store owner's silhouette shifted, panic swirling in his eyes. "You need to leave," he urged, urgency painting his words with a brush of desperation. But I hesitated, caught between the suffocating pressure of the unknown and the need to unearth the buried secrets. "What do you know about her? About this place?" I implored, desperation creeping into my voice, punctuating the frailty of the moment. There are things better left undisturbed. You've stumbled into deeper waters than you realize. His words trembled with the weight of withheld truths. A peal of thunder shook the air as the storm outside deepened. The window rattled, and with every clamor, I felt a pull toward Janice's story, as if a magnet were drawing me closer to the revelation that lay hidden beneath layers of fear and betrayal. I took a step back, shaking my head. I can't just turn away. I have to know what happened to her. I owe it to her, to my family. His expression softened, a trace of sorrow threading through his wrinkled brow. Then you must tread carefully. Trust will be your greatest challenge. With that, he stepped toward a shelf and retrieved a delicate, ornately framed photograph. The image depicted a gathering at a family reunion under the sprawling boughs of a century-old tree, laughter preserved in the stillness of time. There was Janice, radiating joy, surrounded by an unfamiliar crowd. I felt a jolt of recognition. Some faces lingered at the edges of my memory, their familiarity both comforting and disturbing. Who were they? I turned toward the old man. Can I take this? I need to understand the connections. The past will weigh heavy, he warned, sounding almost gentle. But yes, if you must. However, be mindful those you once knew may not be who you remember. As I took the photograph, the sounds of the storm intensified outside, creating a cacophony of chaos that mirrored the tumult in my heart. I slipped it into my bag and clutched the journal tightly, the energy of the pages almost pulsing beneath my fingertips. It felt like a living thing filled with anguish and hope, entwined a tether to my grandmother's heart and past. Where do I go now? I asked, knowing all too well that I was stepping deeper into a world fraught with shadows. Look for echoes, he replied cryptically. Follow the whispers of Janice. Seek the ones who remember her fondly, but also beware of those who speak her name with contempt. I nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at me. As I turned to leave, the air hummed with an unshakable resolve. I would carry Janice's story and make it my own. It was my mission, my unyielding thread, no matter the fear that coiled in my chest. Stepping back into the storm, I was reminded that fear and courage often entwined in a living dance, one illuminating the other. I felt exposed against the torrent, but each step propelled me toward a purpose, to reclaim the fragmented tale of a woman whose life intersected so deeply with my own. The rain drummed against the pavement, washing the dust of the past away, yet not quite cleansing the weight burdening my heart. I wandered, seeking shelter underneath the awning of a nearby cafe, when a figure stepped out from the shadows, startling me. Are you looking for Janice? A voice whispered, threading through the chaos of the rain. I squinted through the sheets of water, recognizing a face from the photograph. The woman was older now, but the resemblance was unmistakable. Yes, you knew her? I exclaimed, my heart racing at the prospect of finally grasping a thread of truth. Her eyes glimmered with a mixture of urgency and sorrow. We need to talk, but not here. They'll be watching. My pulse quickened as she gestured toward a side street, her expression grave. The tension escalated. I saw how deeply the unspoken truths had infiltrated this place. What do you mean? Who's watching? We call them the Guardians, she murmured, voice barely audible over the wind. They protect the history from being uncovered. You've already disturbed their silence just by coming here. If they find you, an icy chill clawed at my spine, and dread pooled in my stomach. I took a step back, fear sparking through me again. I don't understand. Come with me now before it's too late, she insisted, her grip firm as she turned to lead me into the heart of the storm. For every ounce of rational thought that screamed at me to pull away, there was an undeniable thread of destiny weaving tighter around me, urging me forward. It was either a path toward the truth or a trap cloaked in the guise of help. She pulled me deeper into the shadows, and as the wind howled around us, thoughts of my grandmother's warning coursed through me. There was no turning back now. The damp air was thick with a sense of impending danger as we navigated the cobblestone alley, rain-soaked and trembling with adrenaline. I felt the woman's hand firm against my wrist, a tether to something greater, and yet the weight of uncertainty loomed overhead, threatening to crush me beneath its relentless force. Who are the Guardians? I asked, trying to snatch my thoughts from spiraling into a chasm of fear. My voice wavered, caught in the grip of the storm. She darted a glance over her shoulder and lowered her voice. They are the keepers of secrets, those who enforce silence about Janice and others like her. Anyone who digs too deep unwittingly puts themselves in the crosshairs. What happened to Janice? The question burst from me, fueled by a mix of dread and desperation. I needed to know if the answers I sought were shrouded in darkness or if they held the potential for light. She paused at the mouth of a narrow doorway, rain pounding against the surroundings, almost urging me to retreat. She was a protector too, but she fell out of grace. There are those who wish to erase her legacy. Her memories are buried, I finished for her, the pieces clicking together like the raindrops that tapped on the uneven stones. But if she's someone worth remembering, then why are they afraid? A heavy silence hung between us, and for a moment the storm felt far away. Because some stories threaten the very fabric of our society. Janice learned too much, and when you start to sift through the ashes of the past, you risk reigniting the flames with a swift motion. She opened the door, beckoning me inside a small, dimly lit room filled with warm shadows. It felt like a world apart from the storm, cocooning us in a fragile sense of safety. There I could feel the weight of untold tales, hovering in the air with each breath I took. Sit, she instructed, her voice steadier now as the door creaked shut behind us. I nodded, absorbing the space as I sank into a worn chair. The walls were plastered with yellowing newspaper clippings and black and white photographs. Glimpses of the past surrounded me, screaming for attention. Janice was my sister, she said, her gaze penetrating, revealing a depth of sorrow that mirrored my own. We were once inseparable, but she became entangled in something much larger than either of us could comprehend. She sought justice for those who couldn't find their voices, and in doing so she became a target. She didn't have a choice, did she? To speak up? I whispered, recognizing the struggle within the words. No, she replied, her voice softening. But neither did I. I tried to stop her, but it was too late. She was swallowed whole by the very darkness she sought to expose. The air thickened with unshed tears, and for a moment, it felt as though I could reach out and touch the history woven into our connection. I looked at her, the weight of shared loss pressing on my chest. What if I can uncover the truth? What if I can help bring her story back into the light? Her eyes flickered, a glimmer of hope swirling amidst the shadows. If you commit to this, be prepared for the consequences. You will have to navigate a world that would rather forget. I straightened, drawing a deep breath that tasted of rain and resolve. I want to help. For Janice and for those who fought alongside her. Then we must start with this, she said, producing a small wooden box from beneath the desk. The surface was worn and scarred, telling its own story. This belonged to her. It holds pieces of her life that may guide you and it may put you in the crosshairs of the guardians. With trembling hands, I reached for the box and opened it, only to find letters, trinkets, and photographs layered delicately, echoing fragments of a life lived but nearly forgotten. As I sifted through the contents, one leather-bound journal caught my eye, the pages filled with Janice's elegant handwriting, urging me to discover the truth behind her fate. But before I could open it, the woman's face blanched. We have to go. Now my heart raced as I looked toward the door she'd just closed. Uncertainty gripped me, but instinct told me time was running out. Why? What's happening? Someone's here, she said, urgency darkening her voice. A muffled sound broke through the walls, echoing through the narrow space, sending a shiver down my spine. Voices rising in a fervor outside, demanding answers, seeking me. Hide, she urged, shoving the box into my hands as she darted toward the back of the room, a plan forming in her mind. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding as the door rattled against the pressure of what lay beyond. Gripping Janice's journal, I could feel the distinct warmth of history pulsing underneath my fingers. It was a lifeline, a beacon of hope amid the tumult. Just as the door burst open, and shadowy figures flooded inside, I held my breath, half expecting my world to shatter again. But within that heartbeat, a single thought crystallized in my mind. I would not let Janice's legacy slip into obscurity. I would fight for her, even if it meant facing the very darkness that sought to consume me. And then a voice called out, one I recognized from the photograph, one that sent my heart into a tailspin. Where is she? I felt my world tilt on its axis as I realized the connection was closer than I ever imagined. The secrets unspooled like a thread, pulling me into the very depths of a storm greater than I had ever anticipated. The shadows loomed large in the small room, threatening to envelop me as I stood frozen, my pulse echoing in my ears like the distant thunder. The figures stepped inside, their urgent whispers weaving a tapestry of dread that intertwined with the remnants of my own fears. "Where is she?" The voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. It was a voice I recognized from one of Janice's photos, young but filled with resolve. Once a part of a world I could only glimpse through the lens of memories that belonged to someone else. The woman had disappeared behind a wooden partition, and I could feel the air thickening with anticipation. Whoever was here must not have known I existed, or else they would surely have come for me first. I held my breath, clutching the small box and holding the journal close to my chest. The secret it contained felt like a living thing, thrumming with energy and fear. "Just like me. Search everywhere." The voice commanded again, full of desperation mixed with authority. It felt familiar and foreign, a haunting echo from Janice's past that tightened the vice around my heart. I peered through the crack as their figures flitted closer, illuminating my torturous decision. I could run, bolt through the back exit and escape the weight of their inquiries, or I could stay and risk everything for a chance to discover the truth that connected my life to Janice's. There was no right path here, only the choice between two graves of uncertainty. With a surge of courage, I gripped Janice's journal. Her words were my compass, guiding me through the tangled web in front of me. I heard her voice in my mind, urging me not to hide from my own destiny. The woman had gotten this far with me. Her loss hung heavily in the air. I couldn't let her sister's story end in fear and obscurity, but before I could decide, the searchers descended upon the desk where the woman had been earlier, tossing aside relics of Janice's legacy like they were nothing but garbage. "We need to find anything that connects her to us," the authoritative voice lashed out, sounding desperate now. "If she knows something, they'll stop at nothing," came a warning from one of the shadowy figures, a tone edged with panic. "We have to leave." I wanted to scream, to break free and expose the truth, but the weight of my fear wrestled with desperation. What truth was worth the risk? Would I be any different if I found it, or would I simply become another name spoken in hushed tones, another story swallowed by their voracious hunger for silence? Just as my resolve wavered, a flicker of kindness emerged like a candle in the gloom. A young woman with wild curls and clear eyes caught my attention as she turned to meet mine for just a moment. She hesitated, her gaze softening as if sensing the turmoil within me. Her nod was imperceptible but encouraging, an unspoken understanding that she was my ally, even among the shadows. Now the authoritative voice demanded again, and in that instant the tension escalated, compressing my chest. The woman at the desk moved like a phantom behind the partition, but I knew she wouldn't abandon me. Uncertain, I took one step back behind the briefest veil of safety. But as soon as the figure started to search the room with greater urgency, the young woman darted behind the desk and grabbed something, an item I could not fully see. She was a beacon of bravery, I felt keenly, as she turned to me with an intention in her burning gaze. With a swift motion, she pointed toward the back door, eyes pleading. "Go," she whispered urgently, a command filtered through the chaos. It was more than a request. It reverberated with the strength of all those who fought and fell alongside Janice. Did I? In a split second, the choice became clear as the shadows loomed larger. I bolted past the desk, heart racing as I cast one last glance at the shadows casting fear into my world. But the young woman stood sturdy, preparing to protect me. Racing through the narrow corridor, I reached the back door and paused, my hand trembling on the handle. What awaited me outside was unknown, but with Janice's journal nestled under my arm and determination spiraling within, I felt ready to confront whatever lay ahead. As I burst through the door into the night, the air shifted, the storm still raged, but I could sense a clarity emerging from the chaos, a path waiting to be forged. But then, a shattering sound echoed behind me. The unmistakable crack of a gunshot cut through the thunder, and my heart dropped into my stomach. It was a warning shot, a bitter reminder that those who lurked in the shadows were not done hunting, and that moment, I realized my journey had only just begun. The truth about Janice, the Guardian's grasp, and my own identity were becoming irrevocably intertwined, a web of fate and fury unfurling with every hurried heartbeat. And as I stood at the cusp of discovery, adrenaline surged through me, mingling with the anguish of those yet to be freed from silence. The weight of the past collided violently with the fear of the future, and just beyond the fracture in my reality, I saw teeth glinting in the dark, a figure fast approaching, filled with purpose that mirrored my own but also carried the shadows of unspoken sorrow. "Wait!" The voice shattered the air, urgent and piercing. My heart sputtered, torn between my past and the new path unfolding before me. Would I find solace in the truth or become ensnared in a darkness even deeper than the storm? The icy gusts of wind clawed at my skin as I stepped into the night, breath coming in sharp gasps. My heart was still pounding from the terrifying confrontation inside, but a new adrenaline coursed through my veins, driving me forward. The air crackled with the aftermath of the gun showed a reminder that danger was never truly far behind. I sprinted down the alley, my mind racing just as fast as my feet. The darkness felt almost alive, pressing in on me as I twisted around a corner, desperately searching for a place to regroup. Janice's journal was clutched tightly against my side, every page filled with whispers of her past, her pain, and perhaps answers that might lead to my own. However, the closer I got to unraveling her story, the more I felt my own life unraveling. I had left behind a fragment of hope in that shadowy room, a woman who might have understood my plight. Would she be safe? Would the searchers harm her for helping me? Guilt churned in my stomach as I realized I had exchanged one risk for another, and Janice's legacy felt heavier than ever. I ducked into a narrow passageway, the world beyond lit only by the sporadic glow of street lamps. There were no immediate echoes of pursuit, but the instinct to hide felt primal. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision. A pair of figures loomed on the street beyond, casting long silhouettes that threatened to engulf me again. I pressed my back against the cold brick, bracing myself to witness the world I had just escaped, feeling the weight of my decision locking my knees in place as I crouched there, terror strangling my breath. I recalled the young woman's fleeting nod and fiery eyes, a fleeting beacon amid the chaos. Was this what courage looked like? A battle fought in silence with whispered encouragements in the dark. In a moment's brilliance I vowed to find her, to seek justice for Janice and herself. If we ever made it through the night shifting my weight, I fought to quiet the thundering in my chest. I had seen fragments of Janice's life, her joy, her heartache through the words she left behind. I needed to honor that legacy not just for her but for myself. I drew a deep breath, letting it steady me as I inched away from the alley's mouth, racing toward the faint glow of a nearby diner. Inside, the hum of muted conversations and the smell of coffee grounded me amidst the chaos. I slipped toward the back booth, scanning the room for anyone that might recognize me, or worse, those who sought me. I needed time to piece together Janice's story and how it intertwined with mine, a confusing tapestry that felt alive with the potential for revelations or destruction. As I huddled over the journal, my fingers brushed against the worn pages, and my heart quickened. I flipped to an entry that looked particularly weathered, each word a bomb and a curse. If you are reading this, know that you carry the weight of our past, even if it feels like a burden. We are more than our secrets, more than mere whispers. Find the truth in the pine, it is where freedom lies. My eyes filled with tears. I had never felt more seen, yet so utterly lost. The truth was a fierce thing, illuminating the shadows but also casting unfamiliar shapes against the walls of my heart. Could I truly confront it? What would I lose along the way? Suddenly, I was brought back from the abyss of introspection by the stiffening of the diner. The bell over the door chimed, and I looked up, heart racing. Standing in the doorway was a figure so familiar it felt like a punch to the gut. It was the young woman from the room, her wild curls damp and sticking to her forehead, with a look of raw determination in her clear eyes. Before I could reach out or call her name, she scanned the room quickly, as if expecting danger. But she didn't linger. Instead, her gaze landed on mine, a moment of connection forged in the chaos. Then she rushed over, the clatter of her shoes against the vinyl floor drawing attention. Did you escape? Her voice was urgent but carried a tender warmth, wrapping around me like a protective cocoon. I saw them. Looking for you. Two ran. But what about you? I was breathless, torn between relief and the weight of what transpired. I am okay, but we need to talk, there's no time. She glanced back at the door just as it swung open again, shadows shifting ominously. The diner felt suffocating, a pocket of safety that could vanish in seconds. What did you find? I asked, hoping for the glimmer of hope I desperately needed. I have information about the Guardians. About Janice. Every word fell from her lips like heavy raindrops, saturating the air with urgency. But then she hesitated, her eyes darting to the door, expression twisting into something unreadable. Something's wrong. We need to go. In that moment, fear clawed at my throat, whispering of the inevitable choices ahead. I had sought the truth, but how much further would I have to run to find it, and at what cost? But before I could voice my thoughts or rise from the booth, an earth-shattering crash erupted from outside. Glass shattered, screams erupted, and I was thrown against the table as chaos spilled into our sanctuary. "Stay down," the young woman shouted, her body shielding me as the din of panic engulfed us like a fierce storm. My heart dropped into the abyss, and I knew this was only the beginning of our fight-off, our need to confront the darkness that lay ahead. A battle cry resounded from the street, and with every heartbeat, I recognized this moment as a pivotal choice in our intertwined fates. Would I stand and confront the growing shadows, or would fear dictate the path I was next to walk? As chaos surged, I felt an unseen threat tie us together with the urgency of history unspooling. We were on the cusp of a reckoning, the secrets clamoring for release, and the truth hung tantalizingly close, woven in whispers and gunfire. The air inside the diner pulsed with fear and uncertainty as chaos erupted outside, the cries of the terrified patrons slicing through the smoke of fried food and half-finished coffee mugs. My heart beat frantically as adrenaline flooded my veins, propelling me into a state of heightened awareness. I had been searching for answers tangled in Janice's journal, but now those answers threatened to be swallowed whole by the merciless unknown. "Stay down," the young woman beside me urged as she crouched protectively over me, her wild curls hiding the fear I could sense emanating from her. Timid shouts rang out as more glass shattered, echoing through my mind like the painful memories tugging at my conscience. I wanted to scream, both in terror of the unknown and in frustration at the agonizing choices that loomed before me. Who were the guardians? What had Janice been embroiled in that could put us in such a perilous position? I felt like I was being asked not only to fight for my safety, but to take up the mantle of someone else's unfinished battle. "Oh, you know who they're after?" I whispered, barely containing the tremor in my voice. The young woman's gaze fixed on my face, her eyes alive with a fierce intensity. "Yes," she said, her voice low but certain. "But it's dangerous for us to stay here. We can find a safe place to talk." She reached for my hand, her grip warm, grounding me amidst the storm of chaos. The moment our fingers intertwined felt like a lifeline. In this world of violence and fear, where intimacy seemed a distant memory, her touch injected a flicker of courage into my flickering heart. "That's him," someone shouted from the street, sending a jolt of ice through my spine. The diner door flew open once more, revealing two shadowy figures emerging from the chaotic tableau outside, eyes scanning furiously, searching for someone like me. "Go," the young woman urged, dragging me toward the rear exit. I stumbled in her wake, fear igniting within me as I recalled the harrowing visions I had glimpsed through Janice's journal, a world obscured by darkness and rampant decay, like a gothic tale with no end in sight. Just when I thought I had unearthed the thread connecting my life to hers, the distance between our stories felt unfathomable once more. Outside, the cool night air slapped against my cheeks, bittersweet relief coursing through me. We burst into the alleyway behind the diner, shadows dancing like specters across the brick walls. The young woman didn't let go of my hand as we skidded to a halt, panting heavily. "Listen," she whispered, the urgency returning. "We'll need to be quick. If they see us, I echoed, heart racing, both from exertion and appalling anticipation. "The Guardians. They're not just a group. They're ruthless. They'll stop at nothing to erase anyone who knows about their operations." She swallowed hard, and in that fleeting second, I caught a glimpse of her vulnerability. Janice, her actions threatened their existence. I shuddered, drawn deeper into the chilling reality of it all. Janice's truth, her legacy, wasn't merely a collection of heartfelt entries. It was a beacon, perhaps, a murder of crows intent on tearing apart any shred of light. "They're searching for you too, you know," the young woman continued, stepping closer, and I could see the determination brewing in her gaze. "This isn't just about Janice. They think you hold more secrets than you realize." My mind spun. Could my own past be the key to unlocking Janice's? What desperate alliances and fragile stories lay concealed in my heritage? What if shouts erupted from the other end of the alley, an order given in harsh tones that drowned out my thoughts? I instinctively stepped back, pressing my body against the cold, hard brick, heart skittering wildly. "Stay here," she commanded softly, steel in her voice. "I'll draw them away. Find a place to hide." "What?" "No. We need to stick together." But she was already moving, her silhouette becoming a blurred streak as she darted forward, calling out against the chaos, her bravado dazzling in the night. I flinched when I heard footsteps growing closer. They were hunting her, now hunting us. I couldn't let her face this alone. Pushing against the cold grip of fear, I gathered my courage, scrambling after her. Because there was a truth creeping upon me like a dark cloud. It wasn't just Janice's past I sought to understand anymore. It was my own. Something primal stirred within as I rounded the corner, and in that instant, I glimpsed a pair of dark eyes locked onto mine from the shadows, the figure of a man who seemed familiar, cloaked in the murkiness of night. Recognition twisted in my gut, converging with an overwhelming tide of confusion. "Stop!" I shouted, another instinct driving me toward him as uncertainty churned. "Who are you?" His lips curved, but not in kindness. "You don't know, do you? You really don't know what's at stake?" In that moment, reality hit like a ground-shaking truth. I wasn't just running for my life. I was teetering on the precipice of a greater revelation that could shatter everything I thought I understood about Janice, about the Guardians, and about myself. The man's dark gaze bore into me, shadows swirling around him like tendrils stretching toward the light. "You and Janice are more entwined than you ever could have expected." And just like that, my world tilted. The alley faded away, the cacophony of the night silenced by the weight of his words. I felt suspended in a moment that felt vast yet painfully narrow, as though the air had thickened with the gravity of secrets buried deeper than I could comprehend. My heart raced, each pulse echoing the familiar rhythm of dread, but now accompanied by an undercurrent of curiosity, a tremor of hope that perhaps I was on the verge of understanding not just Janice's fate, but my own. "What do you mean?" I managed, the depth of my fear rapidly transforming into desperation. "What are you talking about?" The man stepped closer, the fleeting glow of a nearby streetlight illuminating his face, and with it I saw nuances of familiarity that caused my breath to catch. I stumbled back as his features crystallized in my memory. A grainy photograph I had once stumbled upon in Janice's belongings, a long-lost relative, someone whose name swirled in the recesses of my mind like a forgotten echo. "Felix," the first breathed, as the recognition crashed over me like a wave. "You're Janice's brother, aren't you?" He tilted his head slightly, a flicker of amusement playing at the corners of his lips, but I could see the shadows lurking behind his eyes. They spoke of unresolved grief and pain that had long festered, much like the emotions that bound my heart to Janice's. "She thought you were erased from our family history, a casualty of the past." "Why are you here?" I asked, urgency knitting my brow as the cold realization sank in. "Why now?" "Because it's time to unearth the truth," Felix replied, the weight of his words heavy with remorse. "You hold a piece of what she buried, and they know it." My stomach twisted at the implication. The Guardians would not simply be hunting me for my connection to Janice, they were coming for something exceptional within me. What truth? What do they want from me? Before he could answer, panic surged through me as I heard the distant sounds of voices breaking into the eerie stillness of the night. The Guardians were drawing closer, ruthless and relentless in their pursuit. I glanced back toward the passage we had come from, torn between the duty to escape and the intolerable urge to uncover the past. "Please," I implored him, my voice straining under the weight of conflicting desires, "help me understand. I need to know what Janice was involved in. I need to know who I am, even if it's terrifying." He opened his mouth to respond, but a chorus of shouts echoed from the alley, sharpening our focus. "They're here," he urged, grabbing my arm with a rough urgency. "We have to go." I allowed him to pull me along, our feet pounding against the cold pavement as we sprinted deeper into the labyrinth of shadowy streets. The adrenaline coursing through me dulled the growing ache in my chest. Any notion of doubt rendered irrelevant. I had been thrust into a world I had not prepared for, one that might hold pieces of not just Janice's story, but my own origin, the inheritance of her unfulfilled journey. My panic flickered with fragments of hope, a belief that in uncovering the truth, I might finally make sense of the swirling chaos in my heart. "Where are we going?" I gasped, fighting to keep pace with Felix's long strides. "To the warehouse," he replied sharply as we veered into a narrow side street, breath clouding the air in frantic puffs. "It's a safe place. We need to regroup, figure out our next move. We can't let them catch you." "Safe?" The word resonated like a distant melody, a concept so far removed from the reality of the hunt surrounding us that I struggled to hold on to it. My thoughts raced as fast as my feet. You said I hold a piece of what Janice buried. What does that even mean? Felix hesitated, and in that flicker of hesitation I caught a glimpse of the burden he carried. Your connection to her isn't just a bloodline, it's deeper. There are things she left behind, clues, messages hidden within her writings that could expose the Guardians. A shiver skated up my spine as the implications settled heavily in my chest. Janice had been fighting against a darkness that, until this moment, had felt abstract and distant. But now, as I sprinted through the night, immersed in the dread-filled shadows, it took a tangible form, wrapping around every fiber of my being. The echoing footsteps behind us grew louder, reverberating through the air like a war drum. Their arrival signaled our impending confrontation. My hand clenched around Janice's journal, which I had so fiercely held onto in moments of uncertainty. Within those pages lay more than her words. They were the foundation of her struggle, and now they were the weapon in my own. Keep going, Felix shouted, shattering my spiraling thoughts as we emerged into an open space, a darkened warehouse lit intermittently by the flicker of fluorescent lights that seemed to pulse like distant stars. He pushed forward, guiding me inside as I caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows behind us. In that chaotic moment, with my burgeoning hope battling against the hurricane of fear, I felt a sudden jolt in awareness of the lines that intertwined our lives, so vividly drawn yet baffled by the impending storm. We turned a corner, and the shadows reared up behind us, footsteps echoing off the cold steel walls. There was no turning back now as Felix fumbled for the lock on an inner door marked with faded letters. A chilling thought slipped into my mind, whether I would uncover the truth or become another footnote in the dark history I had unknowingly inherited remained uncertain. And then, a sharp yell cut through the chaos, reverberating through the warehouse like a clarion call. There they are. Get them. Instincts kicked in, adrenaline surged, and I reached for Felix's arm just as the door swung open, revealing a hidden sanctuary, a small room encased in shadows and whispers. But as I stepped inside, I felt a growing dread. What if the answers I sought were ones I was never meant to find? Just as hope blossomed inside me, darkness threatened to engulf it whole. The door slammed shut behind us, sealing the chaos outside. I caught my breath, the weight of fear sharp in my chest as my eyes adjusted to the dim light of the room. Felix stood beside me, his face carved in shadows, taut with anticipation, yet something in his stance reassured me. This was the moment where destiny would either uncover its truth or tighten its grip on my life like a vice. I needed to know what the connection was between Janice and her relentless pursuit of the unseen, the darkness that had swallowed her whole. What happens now? I pressed, my voice almost a whisper, laced with desperation. Felix turned toward the single flickering bulb above us, its sputtering light casting a rhythm of uncertainty across our faces. It's time to look into what Janice left behind, he replied, his voice steady yet tinged with urgency. He reached into the battered bag slung across his shoulder, pulling out various pieces of paper. These are notes she made. Plans, observations of the Guardians, her attempts to expose them. My heart raced as he laid the papers across a makeshift table cluttered with remnants of forgotten stories. Each folded paper held something profound, inked with her intent, and I leaned in, eyes wide. What did she find? I asked, my fingers trembling as I touched the pages, breath caught somewhere between hope and terror. She discovered that the Guardians have deeper ties to our family than anyone ever realized. Their influence reaches far beyond protecting secrets. They're willing to erase anyone who dares challenge their authority. Felix's voice grew somber, the depth of his words wrapping around my heart like vines. They were responsible for dragging Janice into their darkness. She sought to protect those they threatened. She wanted to expose them. The realization hit me like a crushing weight. Janice's fight was not only hers, it was a battle within a lineage, a legacy that I had unknowingly inherited. And now they're coming for me, I murmured, an icy chill slicing through the tension in the room. Felix nodded, but his eyes shimmered with a fierce resolve as I began sifting through the notes and sketches she had left. Something caught my attention, a crude map scrawled on a tattered piece of paper. Where is this? I asked, my voice trembling as I pointed to an ominous marking. Felix leaned closer, deciphering the jagged lines of ink. That's the old archive building. Janice believed it housed evidence, a collection of documents proving the Guardians' illegal operations. Hope blossomed inside of me, filling the hollow spaces left by fear. Then we have to go there. We have to find it. Yes. Felix's fervor matched mine, eyes igniting with the spark of a plan. But it won't be easy. They're already looking for us. The moment they discovered you were in town, they raised the alarm. We need to move now before it's too late. I felt alive and terrified simultaneously, a cocktail of fear and determination igniting a fire within my heart. I can't let Janice's journey end in vain, I breathed. We have to honor her legacy. Felix nodded resolutely, gathering the scattered pages and shoving them back into the bag. As he did, a loud crash pierced the air, echoing off the warehouse walls. Our eyes met, terror reflected in each other's gaze. The guardians had arrived. Now, Felix beckoned, jerking his head toward the back of the room, the sound of scuffling feet racing closer. I followed his lead, supplies in hand, as we stumbled through the dim hallway to a door that felt like the border between despair and the unknown. Tightening my grip on Janice's journal, I felt the weight of our purpose driving me. This was our momentous chance to reclaim her truth, and perhaps my own. That we barreled down the narrow passage, adrenaline surging through us like a wildfire as we burst outside into the stormy night once more. Rain clashed against the pavement, the air electric as we sprinted toward the street, shadows morphing into monstrous silhouettes lurking at the edges of my vision. My heart thundered in tandem with the storm, the chaos around us but palpable. Head for the archive, Felix shouted, pointing toward a distant building shadowed by trees, a flickering light glinting ominously. I nodded, words slipping from my grasp as I concentrated on staying at his heels despite the crippling fear that clawed at my mind. The way forward felt precarious, but I was determined to forge ahead. As we reached the gates of the archive building, its weathered facade loomed before us like a sentinel guarding the secrets of time. Felix reached for the rusty lock, but just as he pried it open, a deafening crack of thunder erupted above us, blinding lightning illuminating the night in a stark flash of white. Go. Now, he urged me, pushing the door open. It creaked like a long-forgotten whisper, inviting us into darkness. I stepped inside, heart racing, feeling the weight of what lay beyond tethering me to the truth. My fingers fumbled for the light switch, and as the fluorescent bulbs flickered hesitantly to life, the dim room settled around us, books and documents piled high, each paper a tombstone for history striving to break free. This was Janice's legacy, a story woven with the threads of courage and defiance, woven into the very core of my being. As we delved deeper into the cluttered space, Felix anxiously searched for the hidden files Janice had once deemed critical. I felt a stirring deep within, a tugging sensation that perhaps the echoes of our past converged here, unveiling a narrative long obscured. And then, as fate would have it, I stumbled upon something that made my breath hitch. A dusty cardboard box tucked away in the corner, obscured by a blanket of dust and neglect. Felix! Over here! I called, my voice reverberating off the walls as I rushed toward it. I flung the lid open, and as I gazed down, disbelief flooded my senses. Photographs, old newspaper clippings, and an unmarked journal sat within, a hollow semblance of a past I had yet to grasp. I felt a rush of warmth spill through me as I opened the journal. Janice's handwriting flowed like poetry across the weathered pages. Among her accounts, I found references to hidden alliances, dreams fueled by a desire for justice, and whispers of the guardians that resonated with my own life in amplifying despair. But then, as I flipped to the next page, a sense of foreboding chilled my veins. Your history is mine, it read. And you are the key to unveiling their lies. My heart raced, a torrent of emotions swirling within, fear mingled with resolve, as if Janice were a part of me now. This is it, I exclaimed, exhilaration shooting through me. Felix leaned closer, his face alight with understanding. This could expose them, but we have to be careful. They're coming, we can't stay here for long. Just as he spoke, the air trembled with a noise that sent dread spiraling back into my heart, a fist pounding against the outer door, followed by voices flooding into the archive. They were here, the guardians had found us. We have to go. Now, Felix rumbled, dragging me to my feet, but I hesitated, caught between the tantalizing threads of my newfound reality and the explosion of danger looming closer. We can't leave this behind, I protested, clutching the journal to my chest, the accumulated history igniting a fire within me. Before we made a single move, the door crashed open, splintering wood flying through the air as figures burst into the room. There's nowhere left to run, one of them bellowed, igniting terror deep within my core. Felix's hand interlaced with mine, and I felt an electric pulse urging me forward. Together, he shouted, his voice unwavering against the chaotic storm. We don't hide, we fight. I nodded fiercely, gripping Janice's journal tightly. I would face whatever emerged from the darkness. I would not let our stories sink into silence with each heartbeat. The moment hung thick with anticipation, and I felt the weight of generations settling on my shoulders, cloaking me in a fierce resolve. Together we would unearth the truth. Together we would rise against the shadows that had tied us all for too long. As the unfathomable figures loomed closer, illuminating the path ahead with the darkness of their contempt, I inhaled deeply, centering myself within the chaos. I caught Felix's eye, an understanding coursing between USA promise forged in the fires of purpose. Let's finish this, I whispered, and together we stepped into the storm of our past, hearts ablaze with the courage to confront the ghosts that awaited. We were not just reclaiming Janice's truth. We were carving out our destinies in the unyielding pursuit of light. The fight for freedom began, and with it, the beginning of a tale that would etch itself into eternity. Together we both affirmed, a unison that would rival the thunder, hearts matching the fierce rhythm of our fight, the culmination of every choice echoing fiercely in the stormy night. And as the shadows threatened to swallow us whole in that moment, we stood on the precipice of hope, a flickering flame against the smothering dark. Nothing and no one would silence our story again. Together we would uncover the truth. The journal trembled with potential in my grasp, and as I stepped into the maelstrom, it sang to the legacy we were bound to honor. The storm raged, but so too did we. Amidst the chaos, we were becoming more than mere fragments of history. We were the threads woven into the fabric of destiny, emerging into the light of an undeniable truth. With each step into the storm, my heart resonated with Janice's spirit, an unwavering anthem of resilience that would see us through the night. We're stronger than the shadows, I affirmed silently, and the world ahead shimmered with promise. And in that moment, united against the darkness, we became a constellation of truth, illuminating the path forward.